It started as a school trip. Harsh was 17, quiet, and burdened by the invisible weight of always feeling less than. He wasn't the brightest in class, not the most athletic, not the most popular. Even at home, he lived in the shadow of a younger brother who seemed to shine in everything he touched. That morning, when they entered the dense forest of Himachal Pradesh, Harsh walked in the middle of the group, not leading, not trailing, just existing. The guide explained the route. Teachers called out their assigned groups, but Harsh was too distracted by the noise in his head to really hear anything. The forest was stunning. Tall pine trees piercing the sky, the scent of damp earth, birds calling out like nature's alarm clock. But to Harsh, it felt like he was walking through another place he didn't belong. He wasn't thrilled. He wasn't scared. He was just numb. When they stopped for lunch, Harsh wandered off a little, just to breathe alone. That's when he saw a deer. It looked right at him and bolted into the trees. For some reason, Harsh followed. 5 minutes. That's all he thought he'd be gone. But when he turned around, the trail had vanished. The trees looked the same. The air felt colder. And suddenly, the silence was too loud. He was lost. At first, it didn't register. He thought, I'll find the path. It's just a few steps this way. But 30 minutes passed, then an hour. His phone had no signal. The sun began dipping behind the trees. Panic crept in like a slow storm. Harsh shouted. He ran in circles. He retraced his steps, only to realize he had no idea what his steps even were. That night, in the dark heart of the forest, Harsh sat under a tree and cried, not for his situation, but for every moment he had buried pain, every insult from classmates, every, why can't you be more like your brother, from home. Every time he told himself, maybe I'm just not enough. He sobbed until sleep stole him. Morning came with a whisper of hope. Birds chirped. Sunlight filtered through the trees like divine spotlight. Harsh opened his eyes with one thought. I don't want to die here. He stood up, not because he knew where to go, but because staying still was no longer an option. That day, Harsh began walking, not just through the forest, but into a version of himself he had never met. He started noticing signs, broken twigs, footprints, maybe his own, slight sounds of running water. He moved toward anything that felt alive. He slipped, he fell, he cut his palm on a sharp rock, but he kept going. By the third day, hunger clawed at him. His lips were dry. His energy was drained. But something had changed. He wasn't scared anymore. Somewhere along the trail of pain, fear had turned into resolve. He found berries, water from a stream, shelter under thick branches. Every night, he spoke aloud, not to God, not to the forest, but to himself. I'm not a loser. I'm not invisible. I'm not finished. With every passing day, the forest stopped being a trap and became his teacher. On day 5, he heard a sound, voices, human voices. Rescue teams had been searching nonstop, and when they found Harsh, he was bruised, thin, exhausted, but he walked out of that forest with his head held high, not because he had survived, but because, for the first time, he had truly lived. In the weeks that followed, something was different about him. People noticed. He started speaking more in class. Not loudly, but clearly. He began jogging every morning, not for fitness, but for discipline. He studied, not to beat anyone, but to challenge his own limits. His younger brother asked, "Bhai, what happened to you in that jungle?" Harsh smiled. "I found something I didn't know I was missing." "What?" "Me." Years later, Harsh would become a wildlife photographer, chasing silence, chasing beauty, chasing meaning. Whenever people asked him why, he'd say, "Because a forest once broke me and built me in the same breath." The boy who once got lost had become the man who led expeditions. He now taught students what nature taught him, that being lost is not the end. Sometimes it's the invitation to find your real self. Because in life, we all get lost. In expectations, in noise, in comparison. But the ones who rise are the ones who decide that staying lost is not their destiny. So if you're in your own forest right now, confused, scared, unseen, don't stop walking. Don't give up. You may not see the way, but the way sees you. And maybe, just maybe, you're not lost. You're being redefined. Years passed, but the forest never left Harsh. Even as the city lights replaced the pine trees and camera shutters replaced the silence of the woods, the boy who had once been lost still carried the stillness of those days like a compass in his chest. He didn't speak much about what happened, not because he was hiding it, but because the world was too loud to understand something so quiet. But when he looked into his camera lens, he felt like he was back there, alone, aware, present. Every frame he captured was a silent thank you to the forest that saved him. His career in wildlife photography started small. A second-hand DSLR, a few local assignments, nights spent editing under the weak light of a desk lamp. But there was hunger in him now, not the kind that makes you greedy, but the kind that refuses to die without purpose. One evening, as he sat editing photos of Himalayan foxes, he received a message from an NGO. "We're organizing a trek with troubled teens. Would you join as a mentor?" Harsh stared at the screen. Troubled teens. He knew what that felt like, to feel like a misfit puzzle piece in every room, to be loud on the inside and mute on the outside. He replied with just 2 words. "I'm in." That summer, he packed his bags, not with fear, not with doubt, but with notebooks, a small projector, a survival kit, and memories that would now serve others. Among the teens on that trek was a boy named Samar, 15, angry, isolated, always with headphones in. Harsh noticed him from day one. He didn't try to fix him. He didn't lecture him. He just observed. On the 3rd night, they camped near a quiet lake. The stars were brighter than any city light could ever dream of. Harsh sat beside Samar, quietly handing him a cup of tea. "You don't like people?" Harsh asked. Samar shrugged. "They don't like me first. Maybe they're scared of what they don't understand." Samar frowned. "You sound like my school counselor." "I'm not your counselor," Harsh said, sipping his tea. "I got lost in the forest once. Alone. For 5 days." Samar finally looked at him. "You serious?" Harsh nodded. "What was that like?" Harsh leaned back, like drowning in silence. But that's when I heard myself the first time. Something shifted in Samar's eyes. The anger didn't leave, but it softened, like a blade set down after years of war. The next morning, Harsh led the group into a deeper trail. They crossed rivers barefoot, climbed rocks with trembling legs. One girl, Ria, slipped and started crying. The others laughed nervously. But Harsh walked to her, offered his hand, and said, "Crying isn't weakness. It's the body cleaning the soul." No one laughed after that. At night, Harsh played a short video using a projector. Shots from his journey, from city to jungle to meaning. The teens were mesmerized, not by the visuals, but by the silence between them. They weren't being entertained. They were being understood. One by one, stories poured out. "My dad left. I hate my reflection. I feel like no one would care if I disappeared." Harsh didn't fix them. He just listened, the way no one had listened to him. Years ago, on the final day, as they packed up, Samar pulled Harsh aside. "You know, I think I get it now." "Get what?" "That being lost isn't always a bad thing." Harsh smiled. "Sometimes, it's the only way to find your real path." They exchanged a fist bump. Nothing dramatic, but in that moment, a boy with rage in his chest found a little peace. When Harsh returned to the city, something tugged at him. His photography was growing. His name was appearing in magazines. National Geographic had called, but his heart kept whispering, "You're meant for more." He began conducting wilderness therapy camps. No sponsors, no big signs, just a quiet retreat for those who had lost their voice in the world's noise. He called it Echoes, because every broken person deserves to hear their echo return. They came. A woman healing from divorce. A boy grieving his father. A girl who hadn't spoken in months. The forest welcomed them all. Harsh led them the way he had learned. Through silence, through stories, through survival. No fake positivity. Just honest presence. And as people healed, so did he. One rainy evening, After a session, Harsh walked deep into the trees. He found the same type of tree he had once cried under as a boy. The bark was rough. The roots were tangled. It reminded him of himself. He whispered, "Thank you." A soft breeze passed through the leaves. As he turned to leave, he saw someone waiting at the trailhead. It was his father. They hadn't spoken much over the years. Not because of hate, but because of distance. Words unsaid. Expectations unmet. His father looked older now, more fragile. "I read your story in that magazine," he said, voice low. Harsh waited. "I didn't know you went through all that," he continued. "I should have listened more." Harsh said nothing. His father stepped closer. "I always compared you two because I was scared. Your brother made life look easy. You were the one walking through fire. I just didn't see it." Harsh looked him in the eyes. "I'm not angry anymore." A long silence followed. His father exhaled. "I'm proud of you, son. Not for your awards. For surviving." That night, Harsh sat alone again under the stars. But this time, his heart was lighter. He realized something. We don't always need to be heard by the world. Sometimes, all it takes is being understood by one soul, and the echo will carry us the rest of the way. Back in the city, Harsh launched a podcast called Lost and Found. Real stories of people who lost something and found themselves. He invited a blind pianist who taught himself by listening to vibrations, a widow who started painting after losing her family, a prisoner who now runs a school inside jail. Each story wasn't about fame. It was about fire, about falling and standing up again, dusty, bruised, but whole. Thousands listened, but Harsh never cared about numbers. His inbox was full of messages like, "Your story saved me from ending mine. I walked into the forest with depression and walked out with hope. My son smiled for the first time in weeks." Every message was a reminder that pain isn't the enemy. Silence isn't empty. And being lost is just the forest's way of inviting us inward. One evening, Samar visited again, now taller, more confident. He had joined a social work program. "You were right," Samar said. "I wasn't broken, just misplaced." Harsh smiled. "Welcome back." They sat by the fire as the sky turned orange and gold. The same forest, the same earth, but newer stories. And in that golden hour, Harsh realized the forest that had once taken everything away had actually given him a gift most people search their whole lives for: purpose, to guide others, to listen deeply, to remind the forgotten that they matter, because no one is truly lost. They're just on the part of their journey where the map goes silent, so the soul can speak. And when it does, it echoes forever.